All right, folks, Jeff finally got a memorable URL. It's jeffsawesomepods.com. His two main shows are going strong. Shattered Worlds RPG is an actual play pod featuring spaceships, magic, zombies, and, yes, robots. And Foolish Wits is a weekly chat show about writing, Shakespeare, daily nonsense, and comedy. Find all the info you need at his sweet-ass new URL, jeffsawesomepods.com.
This is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Some Spoiled, a song of ice and fire too, the co-host switcheroo. The rereading Return to Westeros. Really? Trying to return to Westeros. That's what's happening, actually, in these chapters. HBO Spoiler Edition, uncut, uncensored, and too hot for TV. Bringing you the greatest hits from 2000. Call in with your request now. In these chapters, which are Daenerys and Bran, each of them is struggling with a journey that isn't going in the direction, literally, the direction they want to go. Welcome to Unspoiled.
Monsters are dangerous, and just now kings are dying like flies.
I am the king!
Fuck the king.
Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha.
I'm Rashawn.
All right, so I had forgotten exactly how Daenerys gets thrown off course, so to speak. Is this how this goes in the show?
Girl, who you asking? I know that, no, I don't remember. I'm not even gonna pretend to start that sentence.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Noted. And it may say in Austin's notes, so I'll go and check those while we're talking about this. But
I remember, they're in the show. I remember when they're on the boats and they're heading towards the Slaver's Bay.
Right.
There was a shot where she's standing on sort of like the bow of the ship, I guess. I don't know.
Okay.
The front part. And so I know that there is her on a ship leaving Karth going someplace. Happens on the show.
Okay, gotcha.
But I cannot remember if it goes down like this, though.
Yeah. This is a weird thing where Jorah convinces her to do something that his thinking behind it makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. And I don't even know, even knowing what I know, I'm not sure I want to say it's the wrong decision even now. But realizing how close we are to her just straight up sailing to Westeros, this feels extra painful somehow.
Right.
You know?
Well, she's on her way to the Free Cities on this ship.
True. Right.
Right. And then to stay with, I guess, Ilyrio, and then make her way to Westeros from there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. I get what you mean. Like, you know, like we could have avoided this whole thing that ends up happening when she's over in Slaver's Bay and what that turned into.
Mm-hmm.
But as if she had gone straight to, oh, you know what? I am such a dodo bird.
What?
You guys, this whole thing is such a weird mind fuck. The reading of the book. Knowing but not knowing, having seen the show, but my memory being trash. I wish I could express to you guys what that creates in my head. Plus my own shit that I already have going on in my head that takes up a lot of space. I was almost about to say, we don't even know, like, if they end up taking her to Slaver's Bay.
Oh. Oh, okay.
Because in the chapter, that doesn't happen yet. Jorah's just convincing her, and we see that she has every intention of going to the captain and demanding they turn the ship,
Right.
Right? But we know that she ends up in Slaver's Bay.
Right.
But I was about to say, with a straight fucking face, to all of y'all, we don't even know what's going to happen.
I mean, I guess that's a good attitude and energy to carry with you on the show, but it isn't exactly conducive to what we're trying to do. It's fine.
It's such a weird thing. But yeah, imagine if she had just gone to Ilyrio instead, like told Jorah, nah, I'm not with this plan. Because Jorah is like, we don't know, he could have an agenda. Like, you are sort of trusting him blindly, and we don't know really what his motives are. Mm-hmm. And basically, like, what if you get there and he wants to sell you for gold? But I'm curious what his intentions really were. And I can't remember if we find out in the show. Like, Ilyrio just sort of stops being a part of anything, from what I remember, right?
Yep.
So I don't know. Like, I don't know. Was this a dastardly plan that launched? And do we ever find out? Does that come back in the books? You're not going to tell me, are you?
I'm not telling you shit.
You're not going to tell me. All right. I'll just have to sit with that then.
But yeah, I do really enjoy the theorizing of what could be. Like, let's say that she just went. Let's say that Illyrio's for real. That she could have headed straight to Westeros after meeting up with Ilyrio with her current retinue.
Oh, that would have been a disaster.
Do you think so? Like, how do you think that would have gone?
With just what she has at her disposal right now?
Yeah.
I think Jorah makes a very solid point that, she's not in a strong enough position to threaten to take the throne from anybody.
Gotcha.
Now I don't know. Like, I know Ilyrio is rich. Say he's for real and he intends to really support her and her claim. I guess he has the money that could buy her all the armies that she needs.
If he were to spend the money that way, right?
Exactly. If he were so inclined to support her, but I think that a fair point is made too. When is it when Whitebeard is telling the story, and he talks about how the sellswords all deserted? When he's telling the story about, he's telling her about her. No, it's Jorah telling her about the Unsullied.
Okay.
And he tells the story of this battle that happened, and how basically the Unsullieds are just so fucking gangster. You can't fuck with them. But in the telling of the story, he does mention how the city had bought all these sellswords, like the Second Sons and another one whose name I forget already, and how eventually they just ended up leaving when the battle turned.
Yeah.
And I think that is sort of informative, because even though in the moment Jorah is trying to sell her on the idea of the Unsullied, he also kind of low-key throws some shade on just how much you can trust soldiers that you bought.
Right.
So which would be what Ilyrio would have to do, right? Because Ilyrio doesn't have his own army. He'd have to give her money, and then she could buy, like, all of these mercenaries. Mm-hmm. So, yeah,
it is still soldiers that she bought if it's Unsullied, but they're slaves, and they don't have the freedom to come and go.
Exactly.
And it makes very problematic.
It's super, super, especially because that is considered one of the things that makes them so valuable. On top of just, there's how they're trained and their fighting skill, and they're just fucking complete apparent lack of self-regard, in the sense that they need to, that their life is worth anything. Mm-hmm. Just 100% willing to die on whatever hill you tell me, because that's just all I am. Which is a little bit different than just, a band of guys that are just, a band of bronze.
I like it. So, all right, let's start off with the actual state of things right now. They are becalmed. And there's a lot of the poor Dothraki are not here for this fucking ship travel. They are doing their best. They don't want to show weakness in front of their friends, so it's sort of a competition to see who can play it the coolest. But then a storm pops up at one point, and they are not able to cope. And they're, like, chilling with their horses, kind of, like, praying and flipping out as much as their poor animals are, it sounds like. Yeah.
This whole mode of transportation is harrowing for them. I love that little detail of her three blood riders, I guess, that are standing on the deck because, like you said, they're not going to show any kind of fear, even though they hate every second of it.
They hate it. Oh, God.
And then her two girls, the two handmaids, are just, like, being violently sick and hanging on for dear life to the edge of
the worst.
But, so they have these three ships that Whitebeard and Belwas?
Strong Belwas.
And two of the ships have oars, but this third one does not. And I just don't understand why we are out here building ships with no backup. You know?
I think that maybe you need, like, so much room to fit a galley for people that if you are a merchant ship, you don't do it because that's, like, valuable storage for trade and stuff. But, like, that's a complete guess on my part.
I feel like if you are a merchant and you need the space, right? Because that's your business, that makes sense. But also, isn't getting somewhere in a sort of timely fashion also important and part of your business?
One would think.
Because the wind stops blowing and these motherfuckers can't do shit about it.
Nothing.
Except the best they can work out is they're being towed by the other two ships, which thank God. But it is really slowing down progress, and they are lucky that they have those other two ships because otherwise they would just be sitting.
Yep.
Until the wind decides to blow again. I don't.
I kept trying to think, is there like a way that she could use her dragons to like blow them in the right direction somehow? And then I was like,
the whole fucking ship on fire.
That's not how these dragons work, Natasha.
And Captain is already worried about that shit anyway. He's got buckets of water everywhere just in case some shit go down.
I love this captain just being like, initially like, you keep them shits in their cage. And she agrees to it, but then they're just so sad. And he eventually lets them out, it seems like, just because, like, what is he supposed to say to her, a queen, you know?
Yeah.
But honestly, were I a businessman, a purveyor of services, and there was an agreement that they would stay in their fucking cage, and then somebody comes at me and is just like, but look how sad they are, I'd just be like, I'm sorry to inform you, this has no relevance or bearing on anything.
Ciao. It would be like that fucking Sarah McLachlan with those goddamn dragons in a cage. I'd start hearing that song. I let them out within like the first 15 fucking minutes.
Like, I believe probably that is what my instinct would be, is to like go, aww. But I think that the fact that they agreed beforehand and now they're trying to weasel out of it now that like the shore is out of sight and we're fucking out here, I would be like, oh, that was your plan all along. You were just going to agree to whatever off the top. And then as soon as we were somewhere where there was no turning back, you were just going to be like, well, what if I just didn't do that? And I'd be annoyed about it.
I like, too, that it's mentioned that once they're freed, the, like, rat and mice population goes down.
Yes.
And the captain really appreciates that.
Yeah, there's some practical aspects here that make a lot of sense. So this is a, like... She's getting some chit-chat from Whitebeard here.
Yeah.
And fucking Mormont does not like this guy at all.
He does not. He really doesn't. And you know what? He does have some good questions. I'm not going to lie. He wants to know why this old-ass man
Yeah.
is squiring to Belwas, who, in Jorah's opinion, I think he calls him like an oaf or something. Just basically like, you know, like, how did this motherfucker get a squire in the first place? Like, who authorized this? He does not trust them at all. And she's like on the ship, and she's thinking about one thing I really appreciated is after she tells us just how awful this is going for her Dothraki, we find out that she actually loves this. Being on a ship. She loves sailing, that she had done it so many times as a kid when she was running for Robert with her brother, and she has a little bit of a memory of being a child and saying she actually wanted to be a sailor one day. Like, wouldn't it be great? And Viserys just fucking loses his shit on her. He's just, like, that is so beneath them. You know, he can't even believe she would say such a thing out loud. And I'm reminded, like, again, what a piece of shit her brother was.
Truly. He's, like, even less balanced than Joffrey was. Or is, I guess. But, you know, like, there's, like, Joffrey manages to pretend to be charming in the moments that he needs to be. And it's, like, growing thinner and thinner as time goes on. But he still manages it. Mm-hmm. And it just doesn't feel like, what's his face? What was his name? Viserys? It just doesn't feel like he could ever pull that off or try to. And when I say ever, I mean, like, recently. Because she says something about how there was a time when he was, like, sweeter. You know? But I don't know. It's the kind of thing where she has endured such abuse that I'm like, how sweet was he, though? Like, how much of that is you just forgetting the early signs of what a complete maniac he is?
Yeah. She definitely speaks as though there was a progression, you know, when she talks about how he was, and then, you know, and how different that was from, I think she calls him, like, cruel and weak at the end.
Yeah.
So it is something, I guess, to think about, like, what a life of being sort of stolen, having your life stolen from you, you know, and all the things that you feel like you're entitled to that would have come to you had that not happened.
Yeah.
And then just being more and more bitter and more resentful about it as time passes. And then just add in 2 drops of, but you could get it all back, though.
Yeah. And
how that would twist, you know, and become an obsession, which it did for him. And, you know, even though in their minds, I don't think they would agree it was an obsession. They would just be like, no, it's our birthright. You know, I don't have to be obsessed. But they're absolutely obsessed.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Definitely agree on that.
But yeah, so she's out there, you know, enjoying the salt air, and Whitebeard comes over, and they start, first it starts off with just, like, about the dragons, and their size, and he starts to tell her about the dragon pit in King's Landing, and how people say that caused them to not grow quite as large as they were able to.
Yeah. To which Barristan Selmy, or not Barristan Selmy, to which fucking Jorah Mormont is like, that's not something that happens with people. You can just put them in a castle, and if they're a king, they're very large in spirit, and if they're people, they're very, like, you know, if they're peasants, they stay small. And I'm like, that is so absolutely not what he's talking about. Physical sizing with animals, sir. Like, it's just a whole other thing that he's doing here, that I understand that you don't trust this man, and I completely respect that you're in a lot of ways right about your, like, suspicions. What the hell is this guy's deal? But also, like, what are you talking about trying to get people on your side to see this dude as a fraud when you're just, like, arguing over nothing? It's weakening your position.
Yeah. It's a real kind of, when sometimes you make a statement, and then someone just takes it for, like, they take the most literal interpretation, and you're just like, okay, yes, but also more no.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes, but also more no is like the exact vibe. That's perfect. I love it.
Yeah, because he really is just like, if walls could keep us small, what?
Yeah. And like, this is not exactly it's something that you can see it in goldfish. That's a whole thing. The smallest fish in the pond, or you put a goldfish in a bigger space and they become these fucking monsters. So it's not exactly, I'm sure they have goldfish in Westeros. Like, you gotta know that's but whatever. Jorah is just such a dick because he doesn't like this guy. And even if he said something that was truly 100% verifiably true, I don't think that he would have any time for this guy and anything that he says.
Yeah, he's absolutely just like fighting in the comments section just because he doesn't fucking like this guy.
Why are you following his page? It keeps showing up because all my friends are commenting.
So yeah, they talk about the dragons and the size of them and how big they can get, and then I think he mentioned something about. Oh, she says about the skulls that used to hang in the throne room, right? And she mentions that they were taken down by Robert, and I guess Whitebeard is like, yeah, I've seen them, I was there, and then that turned into. Meanwhile, Jorah is just like, this is not adding up the whole time. He's just fucking that math ain't mathing me.
He says something about Rhaegar, and Jorah's like, oh, did you squire for him too? Is that what you're gonna fucking tell us now? My uncle works for Nintendo.
Oh my god.
He's just ready for this guy to like, and Whitebeard is very gracious despite knowing this man fucking hates his guts. It's just like, no, I didn't. That was so-and-so, and that was how all that went, and gives like a whole list of shit. And if anything, it just makes Jorah more suspicious. Like, anything that he says that seems probably correct doesn't help his case at all.
Right.
It just makes Jorah go, okay, no, extra what the fuck now.
I like his response when she asked about what kind of, like, king her father was. She asked him, she says, what the fuck? She says, did you meet him? And he says, yeah. And she said, did you find him good and gentle? Which is a wild question for her to ask, considering she is aware of his reputation, right? And his response is, his grace was often pleasant.
I died over that.
I want that on my fucking tombstone. If I were going to be buried, I'd want it to say Rashawn de Ludovico. She was often pleasant.
That was so, like, it was so overly diplomatic as to almost be undiplomatic. It's like, and I don't know, personally, I would take that as a pro, because that shows how, like, unwilling or uninterested this guy is in lying to her for easy reasons. He could very well bullshit her.
You know what? That's a good point, but I'm curious because I think if he had tried to bullshit, like, this is kind of a no-win situation, especially with somebody like Jorah, who is so suspicious, who's standing right there, who could pounce on however he chose to answer.
That's true.
If he had tried to blow smoke up her ass and talked about how great, then Jorah would have used that, like you said, as an example of just how duplicitous he was and how you couldn't trust him.
Yeah.
But if he had also spoken really disrespectfully, then that puts her in a position to have to figure out how she wants to handle that as a queen, right? So he handles this really gracefully.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love to her reply is often, but not always. Bet you know.
Come on, stop putting this poor man through this. He's sweating. Well, there was this one time that I remember where he bought me a drink, and He told this really funny joke. So, yeah. No, great guy. So, yeah. And he's also talking about...
Rhaegar.
Yeah. And...
He says, I saw him in a tourney. And Jorah's like, so did every fucking body else. You ain't special. Like Whitebeard didn't even try to pretend like it was anything. He's the one that says, yeah, I saw him in a tourney. And Jorah is just like there on the spot to make sure that, you know, we're not making any assumptions. That doesn't mean anything. It's literally valueless.
I don't know why. I just keep picturing him like off to the side eating an apple, eyeballing Whitebeard, having this conversation. And anytime Whitebeard says anything about like, well, I saw such and such, he's got his mouth full of apple and he's just going, me too, though. Me too. I saw it too. You're not anything. And then just like going back to munching. There's this weird sort of series of asides while he's busy doing other things.
It's funny. Jorah is like, what are you going to tell us you squired for him next? Like, he's just really escalating. But Whitebeard is just really, like, never loses his cool at all.
No.
He does not, like, take any of the bait. He tells a story about a tournament and starts to talk about what happened with Jorah. It says something about, like, you know, how you could win one day and lose the next one. And then he says, a change in the wind may bring the gift of victory, and a lady's favor knotted around your arm. And Mormont is just, word? Mm-hmm. That's what we're doing right now? You better I'm not going to say it.
What were you going to say?
Nope. Not doing it.
What was it?
But, not doing it.
I have no idea even what it is. Oh my God. I'm so...
So, yeah, but he does. And then Danny has to be like, calm down, kind of. Mm-hmm. Like, just relax. Relax.
Yeah, he takes that shit very personally. Jorah. And then there's this interesting moment when she says, Viserys used to talk about the sword of the morning's wondrous white blade. He said Sir Arthur was the only knight in the realm who was our brother's peer. Whitebeard bowed his head. It is not my place to question the words of Prince Viserys. King, Dany corrected. He was king, though he never reigned. But what do you mean? So basically, this dude is trying to be like, and by this dude I mean Viserys.
No. Whitebeard?
No, Viserys, like trying to be like, oh, Rhaegar was such an amazing warrior that there was only one guy in the entire, like, country of Westeros that could be his peer, which was the Sword of the Morning. And Whitebeard is over here like, I mean, he was good. I don't know if I would say that. And, like, we had found out earlier that Arthur Dayne basically was, like, a legend, essentially, with the sword. So not being as good as Arthur Dayne is not an insult.
Yeah, it really isn't.
You know? But he's, again, just having to really figure out how to be diplomatic here. And he is basically like, look, y'all have your good days and your bad days. And sometimes you win because you ate well and slept well, and your weapon is like exactly in the shape it needs to be. And sometimes you're still the exact same badass fighter, but you had Taco Bell the night before, and it was a bad idea, and it's catching up with you, and then you lose, and it's not like you're not good anymore. It just happens.
Right.
Which felt very, like, on point to me. But fucking Mormont just is like, swords win battles, and Prince Rhaegar knew how to use one.
I love the story that Whitebeard tells, too, about Rhaegar as a boy who was so uninterested in fighting and being a warrior and being a knight, and he was like a bookworm to the point where people kind of made, like, jokes about it.
Yeah.
And then one day, nobody knows what he was reading, but something happens. He reads a thing and then decides, you know what? I think I'm supposed to be a warrior.
Yeah, what do you think that is about?
I really don't know.
Yeah, he read some scroll and came out and was like, all right, got to change my entire life.
Yeah, it's hard for me to say because I don't know. It just says that no one knows what it might have been. Just that suddenly he appeared one morning, said, that I need to learn how to fight. But I don't know, like, what he was reading. It says that even the maesters were, like, really impressed with how smart he was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
If this were a different kind of book, I would be like, oh, maybe there's an ancient prophecy that he read that he thought he had to fulfill. But I don't think that's exactly what's going on in this world. I don't know.
I don't know either.
Yeah. It'd be cool if it turned out to be something like, that he thought he needed to protect the realm from, like, the White Walkers and whatever. Like, he'd read some sort of really old, obscure text that told of their coming. But then, like, the whole thing gets all fucked up and he ends up dying and Robert ends up becoming king.
Did not go to plan. I'm a fan of, like, because, like, in terms of prophecies in these books, it's also, George has such a, like, an interest in bringing out the human aspect of things. And even if there were a prophecy, I could see George, like, privately being like, all right, yeah, well, that prophecy's nothing, but it exists, so I'm going to put it in because, like, people make prophecies, but also this is, like, somebody just said this sometime, and then it became this whole thing, and, there's some things I've covered where there are prophecies, and they just turn out to be straight up faked. And that's always kind of fun to me. I enjoy that because, like, it just shows how much people will let things like that dictate their actions, and then what happens when your actions have been dictated by something that was, like, either completely invented or a wildly, like, reaching interpretation of something. Or just sometimes, like, fucking wishful thinking at times, which reaching interpretations usually are wishful thinking. Let's be true. Really,
I mean, if we're just gonna put all, be 100% honest, which no one really wants to be, but
I know, yeah.
So yeah, I think after he gets done telling her about the story about how Rhaegar was as a kid, Belwas wakes up and he has to, like, go.
Mm-hmm. He wants food now. Get it. And he talks in the third person. He does. Which for some reason just gives me, like, Terry Crews sometimes.
It will always just be Jimmy for me. Whenever anybody, like, talks about themselves in third person.
Who's Jimmy?
Fucking the Seinfeld episode.
Oh my god. I forgot about that. What a weird thing.
You took the food right out of Jimmy's mouth. Jimmy lost a lot of money because of you. Jimmy's been watching you work out. Jimmy thinks you're pretty cute. And then Elaine starts talking in third person.
Oh my god.
And then it ends with George. George likes spicy chicken.
I did not, I don't remember much of this episode clearly. All of this is coming as a surprise.
It is so much going on in that episode. It is the Mel Tremay episode. It is George starts talking in third person. George goes into business with Jimmy for the shoes that make your calf muscles stronger so you can jump high. My God, there's a lot happening. Elaine likes a guy at the gym, and she goes to talk to Jimmy about the cute guy she likes, but she doesn't realize Jimmy is talking in third person.
So she thinks that guy is
Jimmy. She thinks she's like, yeah, Jimmy's been got his eye on Elaine. Jimmy's been checking you out, and she's just like, oh, really? She's so excited. Anyway. So, Strong Belwas is hungry. Whitebeard has to go attend to that. And
after this conversation that they have just had, it sort of underlines how ridiculous it is that Whitebeard is waiting on Strong Belwas, because this man just is like really well spoken, clearly has lived his life, and then he's out here with this dude who's just like food, and he has to jump to attention, and it's weird.
It doesn't make any sense, and especially because we find out that he what does he say when he says he was in King's Landing? He says something about, he doesn't just say I was there. He says something along the lines of I served there. Right. Doesn't really go into detail about like who he served. Right? Did it? I don't think it did.
I don't think so. I don't think he would, because he's being so fucking cagey. Do you have any theories?
No, I don't yet. I don't. Not without knowing what his deal is with Ilyrio. Or, like, really fully knowing what Illyrio's fucking deal is.
True.
It's really hard for me to say, but I think that Jorah is not wrong to be suspicious. This setup does not make sense. And I can't tell if this is a sort of a ruse to conceal Whitebeard's, like, true identity. Like, maybe he is somebody that used to hold really significant power, and now he needs to, like, not be that person anymore. But why go out on this mission then? You could just have chilled at the house. So, like, your identity needs to be, you know what I mean, though? Like, if your identity, if you are pretending to not be who you are, because to be who you are openly puts you in some kind of danger, and you are in league with Ilyrio enough that he has sent you to send these ships to Daenerys, why wouldn't he just let you stay at the house? If you're, you know what I mean? Like, if your identity is such a threat. So I don't know. I don't even know. It's possible that whatever he's keeping, he's also keeping it from Ilyrio. You know, like, true. I don't know for a fact that, you know, that they have been 100% honest with each other. I don't know, you guys. There's a lot of question marks.
So, okay, he takes off, and then there's the thing with Jorah, and Jorah is like, dude, this guy is full of shit. I can't believe that you're even listening to him. You have got to, like, take his words with a grain of salt. And she's like, well, if you listen to enough people, you wind up getting to the truth, because listening to everybody means that you get enough versions of the story that you can, like, piece things together. And she says, a queen must listen to all, the highborn and the low, the strong and the weak, the noble and the venal. One voice may speak you false, but in many there is always truth to be found. She had read that in a book. I don't know why I love that that's added there, but
I like that it's added because it's a reminder that no one bothered to try to train her for this role.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
No, you know, it just, she wasn't groomed for this. She was never supposed to be queen, you know. So anything that she's learned, she would have to learn on her own. I love, too, that after he tells her, you know, that this guy is full of shit, and she's like, you know what? This does sound really, really weird, though. And he reminds her that she is not safe, that there are all kinds of people gunning for her, and that threats could come from anywhere, and that she needs to be much more on guard, and, you know, and be careful about who she trusts. And it makes her start thinking about the people that she's run into, and who might, you know, have a fucking bone to pick with her. And she thinks about, like, what happened at the House of the Undying, because, like, she kind of burned her shit down, and that's not gonna, they're not just gonna let that go. And she thinks about all the other cows that are out there that, you know, would, you know, drag her back to, what is it?
Vestofrock, yeah.
If they got their hands on her, so she has to be careful of them. The people in Karth, you know, she's hoping that they're not straight up enemies, but she doesn't really know where she stands with them either.
Yeah, there's a lot of bad blood that she left behind after burning the fucking house of the Undying Town.
So, and then she thinks, you know, that Jorah has already saved her life, and that maybe she should take having her protectors, you know, a little bit more seriously.
Yeah, there's that you'll be betrayed once for blood, once for gold, once for blood, and once for love. And Jorah is like, we have had one of those things so far. There are still 2 to go. And then these 2 assholes show up. I'm just saying. Interesting numbers.
And ultimately, he has a plan. And what he wants her to do is, instead of, like we talked about at the beginning, instead of going directly back to Ilyrio, they should go to Slaver's Bay. Mm-hmm. And he thinks this will accomplish a couple of different things. One, it will be a test of who Whitebeard and Belwas answer to.
Right.
Do they really serve her as queen, or are they really answering to Ilyrio? And they can find out when she makes a demand to change the destination. Mm-hmm. Which is pretty clever.
Yeah, I do like this. It's a good tactic.
Mm-hmm. And then, obviously, once they get there, he thinks she should, buy a couple Unsully on sale. And also says, we can just use all the shit that's in the ship to pay for it, when she's like, I don't have the coins, though.
Yeah.
And he says, and if Ilyrio really supports you, he's not going to begrudge you taking his shit to buy your army, because he wants you to be on the throne, if he's who he says he is. So yeah, this is a very clever plan Jorah has come up with.
Yeah, it's it feels like he's weighed a lot of the and like, I can't say that were I in support of somebody that I would be like, yeah, you could totally sell 3 ships worth of merchandise that I did not give you permission to, and I would be cool with it. But this is also a very different situation than me throwing $15 at Beto on PayPal.
Right.
So
right.
Yeah, I cleans out my bank account and is like, what? I thought you wanted me on what was the problem?
Right, you said you supported me, bitch.
So the wind comes back here and sort of interrupts this conversation. Is there something else that you wanted to...
Oh, no, you're fine.
All right. And everybody, of course, is celebrating. You see, Jorah, we're on our way once more. Yes, but to what, my queen? And then we have her in her cabin feeding the dragons. And he comes up to her late. She's naked in bed, which winds up being this whole thing. And she has taught her dragons Dracarys. This is the first time that we see this. Mm-hmm. And he says it at one point in question, and they turn and breathe fire right at his face, and he's like, fuck! Which was very funny to me.
Yeah, she's like, I tried to pick a word that no one would ever say by accident.
Yeah, good call.
And he just fucking straight up just says it.
And so what he's here to talk about is basically his whole plan. And it takes a long time for him to get to the plan. Basically, what he does at first is just argue, you can't trust these people. You're just accepting anybody who shows up. And without a plan to follow it up immediately, I was like, okay, well, what is she supposed to do then, dude? It takes a minute until finally they get to the point of her being like, okay, so then what do you advise? Because I was just like, are you just here to lecture her when she's already got no options? What do you want from her? But he presents this whole thing, and she at first is kind of like, I don't know. And then the more he explains the various benefits, the more she's like, all right, you know what? And intermittent through this conversation, the coverlet keeps slipping off her shoulder, and she keeps pulling it back into place and being really self-conscious about the fact that she's naked. And then once he gets her completely on board, and she's got excitement over it, she jumps up, buck-ass naked, jumps off the bed, completely forgets about being naked, and it's just like, hand me my belts and all this shit. And then he puts his arms around her waist and kisses her. And it's an interesting moment because she lets him kiss her and is aware that she's letting him, And it says like her mouth opened to his tongue even though she hadn't meant it to or told it to. So there's like a little bit of her that's kind of like,
Yeah.
But mostly she's like, yeah, what the fuck, dude? And he is unrepentant.
Yeah, she's like, you shouldn't have done that. And she said you should not have. And before she can, finish her sentence, he's like, I shouldn't have waited so long is what I shouldn't have done. I should have kissed you back then and there and that other place and that other time too. Which is not where she was going.
No, it is not.
And she is suddenly like very aware that she's still topless and covers herself. But it also says she covers herself so that her nipples couldn't betray her, which sort of implies a sexual excitement.
Yeah.
And she is just kind of telling him that it's not you, it's me. The kiss, it's not that I don't like you like that, but the kiss is inappropriate. I am your queen. I'm not your girl. That's just that's just not what this is. In a way that is very much not about shooting him down as a man, or rejecting him as a person, but kind of just rejecting him because it is inappropriate considering her station and his role. And he tells her that she is the bravest and sweetest and most beautiful woman he's ever seen. And he calls her by her first name.
Yeah, I didn't care for that. That particularly, I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
She didn't care for it either. I mean, she immediately corrects that shit.
Yeah.
Like, no, your grace. And he, kind of backtracks and stumbles a little bit. But, he comes to the three-head dragon again.
Yeah. And it's just like, well, what if I gave you some head? Am I right?
Ma'am.
I'm saying. I could be good at that shit.
Yeah.
I may not be your brother, and I know that's a tradition in your family.
Right?
But I could still work for it.
I could be a husband. And I love that he includes, is plural. You can take husbands. He just wants to be invited to the party. He doesn't need to be the star of the show.
Which truly, I think, is him overestimating how cool he would be about this.
He can't even tolerate this Whitebeard guy being too, chummy with her.
Yeah. There's clearly jealousy is stemming here.
You are not set up to be a brother husband. You're just...
God, that sounds weird.
It does, right?
Sister wife works, brother husband. I don't know about that.
It's an entirely different kind of energy, right?
Yeah.
It feels very like something you would make like an incest kind of thing. That's your brother husband. But I didn't mean it like that. I just meant one of multiple husbands.
Bro hubs. Bruh hubbers. That doesn't work either.
Yeah, it's telling that we don't have a phrase that just flows for that circumstance, right? But we have a bunch for when it's multiple wives. But anyway, that's a different conversation. And he tells her that she will never find anybody that would be even as half as true to her as he is.
What do you think?
I mean, I think he believes it.
Yeah. I think that's true.
I think he absolutely means it when he says it. I know that she is considered a fully grown woman. I know that she has been married. She's been pregnant. She's not a child in this world. And yet all I can think is that she's like 15.
I know.
If you don't get your old ass off of her. And I am sorry that is just how I think about it. Because I feel like that is not supposed to be part of the conversation here.
I don't know that that's true. I don't know. I will just say I think it's worth talking about. Whether or not it's was traditionally acceptable. We could still talk about that being fucking gross. Yeah,
the thing about it is that, we, and I say we, I'm implicating myself in this as well, especially with the show. The thing with Khal Drogo is also just as gross because she's she's even fucking younger.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to lie and be like watching that man on that TV show with his fine self.
Oof.
I was,
And she doesn't look 15, she looks...
in her 20s.
This is the thing with casting, you make somebody who's supposed to be a teenager look like they're 25 because you cast somebody who's 25.
Yeah.
It hits different than watching somebody who really looks like they're 15.
That's true. Like, if they had really hired somebody... Like, if they had done with Daenerys, like what they did with fucking... Maisie Williams and really got like a legit little kid, or even Sansa, got a real little kid. It's telling that they didn't.
Yeah,
they knew what they had played. They knew that would not play, or we would not be here for it if we had somebody that was really that young.
That was the thing. I don't know if you've ever seen Desperate Housewives, but I was like a big fan way back when it first came out.
I was just thinking about them the other day.
Did you watch it?
I did, like the first 2 seasons at least. I was just thinking about that show not a whole 2 days ago and remembering like what a fucking phenomenon it was.
It was. Dropped. And looking back at some of the storylines now, I am just like, wow, I would have a very different reaction to that. Like there's a whole storyline with this woman's husband who substitutes all of her birth control with placebos so that she gets pregnant against her will, which has just what?
Whoa.
Uh-huh. And it's treated as just this wacky thing. But there is a storyline in the first season with one of the housewives having an affair with the guy who does her lawn. Yeah.
Oh, yep. I remember that.
He is a high schooler, and he's supposed to be I think he's 17. And I watched some special features, and the director was saying how when they did casting, at first they went for 17 and 16-year-old actors. That was who they were putting out the call for. But when they did the test scenes between her and those kids, it was so icky and so creepy that it felt way over the line, and also you could not understand her perspective on it at all.
Right.
So they wound up finding a dude who just happened to look young but was also 23 and fine as hell.
Yeah.
And so that it was really... And I'm thinking about, does this shit normalize these sorts of relationships? I feel like that's... If it doesn't look good because it's creepy, maybe we should just sit with that and let that be what it is,
That, and also I'll add that has a direct relationship with how we perceive when we hear about kids, right? And having relationships with adults. When we hear, a 17 or 18-year-old kid, because in our mind, we are seeing what teenagers look like on TV.
Right.
Whenever, you'll see people, if a guy gets caught with an underage girl, one of the first things is, I didn't know how young she was. And then you'll see people talking about how adult children these days look. Suddenly, children all look like they're 30.
Yeah.
This kind of, and not only do we perceive them as looking older than they actually are, but we also perceive them as being way more worldly than actually they would be.
They know what they're getting into. They really don't. I promise they don't.
Yeah, and I think that has a lot to do with how those relationships are portrayed. And I think you are 100% right in that if an adult having sex with a 17-year-old and the kid looks like they're 17 and that made you feel icky, then that's because an adult having sex with a child is icky. And let's not make that part of our story.
Right.
Unless we're going to address how fucking icky it is, and
that's the main thing is that if you're going to do it and then you have to be willing to face the real implications of this, and they don't ever. It's always just look at him, what was she supposed to do kind of thing, which if it was a male character having sex with a child, it would be a very different thing, but because it's this woman and this super hot guy, it's treated as he's lucky because that's how we act with fucking boys who are abused, and it's super cool. Yep. So yeah,
all right, I don't know how we got into all that.
Because you were talking about the age difference between Jorah and Khal Drogo and Daenerys.
Right. So even though, for the the conceit of the book is that she's a woman and she's trying to be queen, and I'm still uncomfortable with Jorah's sort of lust for her. And it does have a lot to do with the age difference.
Also, the fact that she looks so much like his ex, I'm just side-eyeing a lot. Like, man, you need some therapy. You don't need another relationship, okay?
That's right. Yeah, but that's how that ends, with him just saying, you're never going to find another love like mine. And then we go to Bran. I really like this chapter.
The Bran chapter?
I did, yeah.
All right, well, tell me off the top what you liked about it.
I like when he is in his direwolf a lot, and I really like that we are seeing how he hates to leave.
Yeah.
And that this is becoming a real concern. I like that, even though I guess the kids get it, I guess Mira and Jojen get it, and it doesn't need to be said explicitly, but I want them to understand why he loves it so much. And I want someone to acknowledge it. I feel like I want it to be said aloud.
Gotcha. Yeah,
you know? But yeah, I like the way this is done. I like the kind of, as his Hodor is waking him up, and he's still like in his wolf mind, and he in that brain is like, oh, those are just human noises. That's human sound. Ignore it, But then he can't because Hodor is so insistent, and he's like palming him like it's a fucking basketball.
I just saw the Hulk smashing Loki back and forth.
But yeah, and there had been a conversation, not a whole conversation, but just that because we got a lot of Bran warging in the show, and a lot, but it wasn't. It was just more than we got with any other Stark kids,
right? Yeah,
right. But it doesn't seem to be coming anywhere near as close as what we're getting in the books. And I like the how free he feels when he's in the wolf, and how powerful he feels, and also just the way his thinking is so different. Even though it's Bran, and it's a Bran chapter, it's a Bran POV, but it's like Bran plus
or Bran minus, depending. He has an interesting reaction too. Like, I would think you dreamed that you were eating this like wet, bloody meat, and then you wake up and you'd be like, ugh, ugh. But instead, he's like, no, I want to go back to sleep so I can eat that sweet ass fucking deer meat.
I love that. It because it feels like that is the direwolf brain still having like some control, even though he's air quotes like back,
right?
And it shows like a real, like, I can't decide if we have two separate brains and that they are kind of smushing into one, or so that they're almost like integrated.
Okay.
Or if it's two separate brains and there can only be one. Because Jojen talks a lot about how he has to be careful because he'll just end up stuck there.
Yeah.
Which, as an aside, you guys, just between me and y'all, there's a lot happening in the world right now with all the wars. His family is scattered to the winds. There are zombies coming he don't even know about just yet, just like a little inkling of. If I had my druthers, I would just go ahead and be a wolf. I would just check out. Like, if right now I had the option to just go be a cat and be like, fuck my credit score, I would go be a cat.
I wonder how that would work. Like, because I'm assuming when he's warging, he is out of his body, but his body's still there and still needs to be fed and whatnot. So, like, eventually, if you're starving to death in your real body, does that sensation begin to overwhelm because it's growing crucial now? Or is it just, like, so background by then that you don't really even notice that you're starving?
I think that's the danger. I think the danger is that it does become so background that you're not experiencing your own, like, human death. That's, like, the danger of being stuck. And And then your human body dies and your human consciousness dies, and I'm assuming the warging ability is tied to that. So that's it. You're done. Like, it'd be cool if the human body just died, but yet his wolf brain was still out there running around. But I don't think that's not how that works. It feels very much like this is all centered in the human, and he just projects himself in, into the animal.
Right.
Now, in my version, I would be fully cat. So this body could just fuck off.
Yeah, that's fair. As long as I have like a good situation, though, I don't want to be like some stray cat. That's a struggle. I don't need it.
Oh no, I could just stay me and struggle.
Exactly.
No. I am be one of my cats.
Turn into your own cat.
My cats would hate that.
So yeah, and it's interesting what you say about like wishing it was acknowledged, because it's really just kind of like frustration that we're getting from everybody else. And like, dude, you know how dangerous this is. Why are you not listening? Like, you get it, and yet you refuse to get it.
Yeah. Exactly.
And this is coupled with Jojen wanting Bran to mark trees or do anything to sort of like signal where he is, and like help them with sort of figuring out some of how this is working, and maybe being able to contextualize what Bran sees when he is a wolf with what might be actually going on out there in the world.
Right. Also, I think, I'm not sure if I misread it, but I feel like also what he wants Bran to do, these little tasks, is to also practice
asserting his mind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like still being Bran, even though he's warging, so that he's still in control. I love too, like, one of the things when he's in the wolf, the wolf is thinking about its pack.
Yeah.
And that I thought was really, really neat. I don't know. I think this might be the first time, not the first time, because we've heard him like back in Winterfell be warging and kind of being like, "Oh, my brother's outside crying," talking about like Shaggy Dog, right? But this is like all of them. It's a memory of the entire pack, and it's so sad because he sees, like, the direwolf sees like these regular Degler wolves, and he's like, "Oh, a pack," and like I used to have a pack.
Yeah.
And he, remembers all of them, even John's, who he calls the six who stood aside. But and he and it says that he could still feel them sometimes.
Yeah.
And even has a memory of like Lady, like, except the one that they took from us, I think he says, or something.
I hate that.
Yeah. It was really neat. I had said to somebody in one of our Facebook groups how I wish that we had gotten more of this in the show. I know a lot of people have said that when the show was actually happening. And I really didn't get it because, not for nothing, but it just wasn't that interesting because it wasn't presented that way on the show.
Yeah.
So I was always kind of like, why do people keep saying that? But I'm starting to understand why people keep saying that.
Yeah, there's a couple things that, like, I can see that maybe look, let's just be honest. The writers for that show did not know how to make certain things interesting unless there were tits or blood involved. So I could see them just sort of feeling like, Bran just running around as a wolf. Nah, we're good. Same thing with, like, John's relationship with Ghost. Ghost is barely anything in the show. And meanwhile, in the books, that is like John's right hand, plus he's warging into him a little bit, plus, there's just this like sense of Ghost, like, being able to tell when some shit is not right. And it's not explored fully in the show. And I understand that a lot of that is the budget, because making the dire wolves look the size that they are was expensive.
Yeah.
And they needed that for the dragons. But it is also, sometimes I suspect that they just didn't really know how to translate that from a book and still make it compelling to people, because they weren't great at that, and I feel like they didn't have a very good imagination sometimes.
Yeah, it is a real shame. The one thing I did say in the comment was that it's cool to think about all of the Stark kids, even though they're all scattered. You know, at least we know for a fact, at least 3, at least Arya, Bran, and Jon have some sort of warging thing happening. And how cool it is to see all of the kids have that shared experience, even though they don't know they're sharing it.
Yeah.
And then to be in Bran's wolf, and there seems to be some awareness that they're sharing this experience, you know, where he talks about feeling their presence at his back. That's just fucking really cool.
Yeah, I feel so bad for, like, if the kids got back together and then they started to share their experiences and realize what they were, like, feeling and seeing, and then Sansa is just like, wait, you were?
Yeah.
Like, how sad is that she just finds out that they were having this connection with their wolves that she just got robbed of. Ugh.
Yeah. So he comes upon this other pack of wolves, and they have killed a deer, and he decides that shit's his. And he is like giddy about the taking of it.
He is so excited. When he comes out of this, he's thinking to himself, maybe I could go back in and fight those bitches again. I'm like, why are you so happy to fight? Okay, all right. I'm just not into that kind of confrontation, I guess.
So that was fun, and I part of me feels like, because it seems at first I was like, Bran, why is he so aggro? Like, what is happening? But it must be the feeling of being able to fight and take what you want, right?
Yeah.
Considering how much he's lost, has to be exhilarating.
Yeah,
you know, to be able to stand up for yourself and have power, you know, and be like, you know, and what the fuck you gonna do about it? And that has got to be is I don't want to say addicting, but as fulfilling as the freedom he feels from just being able to fucking run around, you know. So yeah, I really like that was included. That he's not only is he running around and being joyous and free, but also he's about that action.
Yep.
In a way that he can't be in real life, or you know, in his human body. But yeah, they wake him up, and then they have nothing but lecturing for him, which...
Yeah. I wonder if it's been addressed, and it's supposed to, like, we've had that conversation already, and deal with it, dude. But not getting to see it feels like... I get what you mean, you know? Let's just acknowledge that there is a reason for him feeling this way, and it's a reason that you guys are just not going to understand. Like,
yeah. It feels almost like the attitude feels very much like you're out here playing around and being irresponsible.
Yeah.
When, you know, we have these very big, important things that we should be doing, and you aren't doing those things. So, this thing about the frogs... It's like you said earlier, like, ugh, I'm so sick of frogs.
Yep.
That delicious deer meat I just had. Jojen makes Bran say who he is.
Yes.
So what?
Like, he hit his head and he forgot who the president is or something.
Right, because I thought I was reading that wrong. But that's really what he was doing, right?
Yeah.
Huh. He wasn't that far gone.
I mean, Jojen doesn't know that, I guess, though. Apparently, Jojen has seen this before. So that's also an aspect of this that, like, it's, you know, Bran is not taking it seriously because it seems like he thinks that that's a certain worst-case scenario and I would know if it was getting that bad. And Jojen is like, I don't know that you would know, dude, because, you know, so-and-so didn't know. But... yeah, it's almost like, are you waking up and completely feeling disoriented and like you don't remember who you are anymore? And no, we're not there. But he's like making sure that's not the situation every time.
Now, when did we find out here that he's seen this before?
Doesn't he say something about it? I might have missed. Oh, I'm trying to find the spot where he's talking about it. You were gone too long. I'm sick of frogs. Did you mark the trees? I forgot. You always forget. I was a prince. I was the prince of the woods. You are a prince. You remember, don't you? Tell me who you are. And this is when he starts thinking about Bran the Broken and just like how completely his version of life sucks balls in comparison to Summer. Mm-hmm. And next time, mark the tree. Any tree, it doesn't matter so long as you do it. Eat with your own mouth. A warg cannot live on what his beast consumes. And this is when... Oh, yeah, Bran says, how would you know? You've never been a warg. You don't know what it's like. And I do kind of wish that he said that out loud, just like, you don't get this situation, because it would probably lead to the conversation that we're wanting.
Yeah. And then it kind of, like, gets distracted because Hodor, like, suddenly starts freaking out.
Yeah.
And that whole, like, sort of conversation gets interrupted. His train of thought... Like, if that Hodor moment doesn't happen right then, I think it's possible maybe Bran would have said something because he's really in his feelings right now. Mm-hmm. But then it just kind of goes on to, like, Mira making dinner.
Maybe he doesn't say that. I could have sworn he did. That's not like me spoiling you on a thing we find out later or anything. I just thought he said that. He
might have said it earlier when he was telling Bran about warging. You know, maybe that's where it's from, and I just don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Maybe.
But where are we at now?
Then she comes back with her frogs, and some fish, and they make a stew. And then they start talking about where they're heading.
Right, okay.
And Mira basically is like, we've got it pretty good in this spot. Why don't we just stay here? Bran is like, there are bannermen all over the place that we could go and see and find out what's going on. They would keep us safe, and we could just wait shit out, basically.
Yeah. And then we're reminded of what the Maester said before he died, which is the Iron Men on the stony shore, and east there's the Bastard of Bolton. Basically, like, you don't want to go those places.
Yep.
And Moat Cailin and Deepwood Moat have fallen, and Bran is realizing that all of these sort of allies that he was taking for granted are places that he could go for safety. A lot of them actually are not a thing anymore.
Yeah, and like the idea of it sounds easy and pleasant, especially the like just find some horses. Which Jojen is like, oh, you mean steal them? Is that what we're doing? We're just going to take shit from like regular people who are struggling also? Like, that's not how we're doing this. When
she says about getting the horses, he's like, and if we had wings, we could fly. Yeah,
that cracked me up.
Goddamn.
Well, if we had some horses, if a lot of things. Guess what?
He is so fed up of their bullshit.
Yeah.
And I don't think that Mira is wrong. I don't think Bran is wrong. I just think that Jojen is really, really over their nonsense.
Yeah, you get the impression they've had this conversation a lot.
She literally says, like, we've plowed this field before.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, like, Jojen has that heavy burden of responsibility, the kind of, I know where we need to be. And Mira is like, well, you have a general idea of where we need to be. Mm-hmm. But like, how are we going to fucking find him?
Yeah.
Like, do you know exactly
He's like, we're just going to go north.
Right.
And just go north?
Yeah,
that's
like,
the plan.
She's like, I don't know exactly what's beyond the wall, except that there's a lot of fucking space there.
Yep. It's big. So unless you have some sort of printout from MapQuest or your Google Maps, I just don't really know how we're going to like find this. And he says like, well, maybe they'll come to us.
That's exactly what I was about to say.
Maybe you like stealing horses feels pretty reasonable in comparison to like, let's just go and maybe they'll come to us. This is...
Yeah.
There was a thing that happened to me, though. I say that, and then I'm like, you know what? I do have, like, a weird faith about certain things just, like, working out. When I wanted to go on that program, it was after my freshman year of college, which went badly. And I was like, I do not want to do this anymore, but I don't know what I want to do. And there was this project called Leap Year, which was meant to be a break year between college and high school, for you to experience some things and get a better sense of who you were and what you wanted to pursue.
Oh, that's really cool.
And that is the program that I went on when I went abroad. But when I applied for it, I had to go for an in-person interview at this house in, like, Massachusetts. I lived in Connecticut. And nowadays they probably do that shit via Skype or something. We drove all the way up into Massachusetts. It was at least 3 hours. And it turned out that the directions we had were not right. We printed it out, but they were not updated. You know how that would be? So there would be like a change in the road name or something, and then you were fucking screwed. And we drove around, and we had like a time that we were supposed to be there by, and there was this whole like blank stretch of fucking road, and my mom was just like, I don't know what we're gonna do. I have no idea where to go. You don't have a phone number to call them, and there's no phones around here anyway. And there was this house that was like up on a hill, and I was like, stop there for directions. And my mom was like, there, why? And I was like, I don't know, just stop there for directions. And we went up there. There was somebody in the yard, and we were like, hey, we're trying to find such and such. It says this. And the guy turns around and he's like, are you Natasha? We had driven around. We had no right to be anywhere near where we were supposed to be by then. And we just happened to pull up to like one of the 1,000 houses around and ask, and the guy was the guy. Like, it was just really fucking weird. And my mom always talks about that, of just like, there were so many things that she feels in my life were like fated to go the way that they went. And I don't know how much I believe any of that, but that was one of those moments where I still think about it and I'm like, man, that really could have just not happened. Like, just that one thing could have gone wrong, and I could have just never gone on this trip and done any of this stuff. So, I don't know, maybe Jojen, maybe they just come to you. What do I know?
It is true. You heard my almost dying in the parking lot of the mall I worked at story. Like, I should have just collapsed in a dark parking lot and been found the next morning. that's the odds. The odds are just astronomical. And that you just picked this random house, and it was the house that you were supposed to be going to.
Yeah. Just, there have been a few times where I have, like, just at seemingly random been like, well, do this. And it winds up... My mom was, like, in the midst of dating right after her and my dad split up. And I met Jim. And I had met all of her boyfriends, and they were trash. And this dude comes in and introduces himself and walks out to wait for her in the car because he's coming to pick her up to go somewhere. And my mom says, so what do you think? And I said, yeah, I think he's the one. And she was like, what? And I was like, no, yeah, I think you're going to marry him. And they have now been married for 15 years. And, like, granted, it could just be that I said it was a thing. But they split up for a minute there. And she was like, but you said, and I was like, Ma, maybe I was wrong. I know this is crazy, but maybe I was completely talking out of my ass, and it just felt like the thing, and I was wrong. But they were split up for like almost a year, and they wound up getting back together, and then like getting married. So sometimes I know things, but then I think I know things, and then I'm wrong about them, and that's the dangerous part.
Didn't you remember that you don't know anything?
Yeah, being right a couple times gets you starting to think that you like can really tap into that when you feel like it. And no, that's not how that works at all. Sadly. So this, oh yeah, here it is. My third eye is open like you wanted, so wide open I fear you may fall through it and live all the rest of your days as a wolf of the woods. The boy promises you won't, but will the wolf remember? You bend to his will more than him to yours. So yeah, I think that's what you're talking about with him just like marking trees in order to exercise his own will up against the wolf's will.
I love this too. Bran is like, well, I'm only 9 though. Can you give me a break? And Jojen is like, yeah, no, I can't though. He's like, yeah, it's true, you're only 9. And it's smart to say you're only 9 if you have time to grow. But we don't have that kind of time right now. We don't have the luxury and the privilege of you being able to grow into your power and anything else. Like, we need you to be activated, and we need it like stat.
Figure it out.
Right, and makes Bran say the words of House Stark, and Jojen then tells us that he had dreamed of a winged wolf bound to earth by chains, and he came to Winterfell to free him. Mm-hmm. And he's like, yeah, I did what I was supposed to do, and yet you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing.
You are not holding up your end of things, sir.
It really is.
Contractually obligated.
Yeah. I am not splitting the tips at the end of this shift if you don't fucking do some side work.
How can I help you master a gift I do not understand? And at this point, it's sort of interesting because Mira and Jojen have been arguing about what to do, but once Bran starts to chime in with what he wants, all of a sudden Mira and Jojen are on the same side again.
Yeah, it happens very quickly.
Yeah. He's just like, okay, look, I might not agree with him, but you're like extra wrong, so.
Yeah, at one point he's just like, when even though he's gone over the fact that he doesn't have the allies that he kind of assumed he has, one of the things that he says, I think it's Bran that says it, is that they could, if they're going to be stealing shit, they could steal a boat and go down to where Lord Manderley lives.
Right,
Bran has a real positive memory from their interaction. And it says, he could probably help us. He said he wanted to build ships. Maybe he has ships and he can help bring Robb home, and then we'll all be safe and all this will be over, basically. Right. And I think that is kind of where Mira is just like, oh, this is unhelpful. Yeah. I thought I wanted to argue about Jojen's plan, but this is not helping me do that.
Yeah, this is it's interesting because so many of his plans, if they followed through, it would have gone really, really badly, knowing like the state that things were actually in. And when he is given, because what Mira comes down on is, you get to tell us what to do, and we'll listen to you, but you better think this through. Yeah. And once he does, he realizes all of these things result in me being wherever, still crippled. Yep. And I cannot, if there is an option for me to figure out another way to live, I just can't do this anymore. Like, I don't want this. And it brings when he comes tears. Back to himself, I was about to say, he realizes he's crying, and it's just like, fuck.
Yeah. I want to ask, or it's not really an ask because I can't really get answers, but I want to just say, Hodor is really agitated throughout this, which we haven't seen a lot of, and I kept waiting for something to happen. I kept waiting for there to be like a threat somewhere nearby, or like trying to figure out, and then we don't get any answer, just that he's so agitated that they actually have to send him outside because he won't be quiet. Yeah. And it just says that sometimes he gets like this. But we don't find out what's going on, and I was almost distracted by this, not in like necessarily a bad way, but just kind of like, what is going on?
Yeah, I get that.
What is happening with this? And I really, really, really thought that there was going to be, I don't know, raiders or something, outside that was threatening them or could threaten them if they were discovered. But then the chapter just ends and nothing happens, and I was like, well, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's sort of interesting, and I feel like I kind of like it because there, not to say, we all know what the deal is with Hodor in the show.
Right.
Unclear to me if that's actually the way things are going to be in the books. Because that, by then, was ahead of where the books actually are. But I was really... I know exactly what you mean, and I was sort of waiting for the same thing the first time that I read this. I remember that. And then I look back and I sort of realize it's because I'm so used to people who have some sort of disability being turned into superheroes in some way. Mm-hmm. And that being like, oh yeah, well they have this one thing so that they are not able to interact in like a neurotypical way, but they have huge advantages from this thing also that we can exploit as part of our group and whatever. And that doesn't seem to be what he's doing. He's just like, no, Hodor just struggles sometimes because he deals with this disability, and that is just something that they are coping with and learning to deal with. And it's not that he has some magical connection with the world that lets him know when danger's coming before anybody else notices. It's just literally that's something that they have to take into account. He's not just a horse, that they can put Bran on his back and get where they need to go, and then he's not a factor anymore. He's a person.
Right.
And this is just a whole, aspect of his personality that sometimes comes out where he just gets very excited over a thing and starts to grow more active because of it,
I remember the show did a lot of, making his reactions to stress or stressful situations, having him sort of begin to behave like this. So I just sort of kind of have it linked in my brain that whenever, to your point, whenever he is taking up space that's not in service to someone else, it's indicative of a problem. You know? Whether he is reacting to stress and conflict amongst the group or some sort of external threat. So I think I really appreciate your take on that. That no, this is just who he is, and sometimes he's just going to be saying Hodor a lot because he just he's got some shit he wants to talk about. I like that. Okay. I
really like the idea too that he just tries saying his name in a bunch of different ways, because that feels like what the actor was probably experimenting with. He's like, all right, I literally only ever get to say this one word, and let me try it in these pretzels are making me thirsty sort of style,
Yeah, I love that too, because if the idea, the Hodor character is really an interesting sort of side character, I guess. Because we know that the idea is that he cannot really speak. He can only say this one word, right? But it doesn't have to mean that internally he does not understand what he's trying to say. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I like the idea that even though it's just the one word, in his head, I'm actually saying a thing.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying depends on it impacts my inflection and my tone and what syllables I stress and everything that we do when we speak.
Yeah. That's kind of an interesting. It's almost like just trying to learning how to communicate with only body language kind of thing. It's you're not speaking, but there's a clear intent behind these movements, and it just still translates completely.
Yeah. I mean, it's not to be funny, but kind of being funny. It's the joke about all the different things that just saying bitch could mean. Just based on how you actually say it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Considering the number of texts that I have sent to you, that's literally the only word to start things off. Followed by either something amazing or me going, this motherfucker.
That's what's so great about it. It's opening up, but it's not giving me any, I have no idea what's going to come after.
Yeah.
It could be anything. All I know is that it's going to be good.
Yeah, right. That's exactly it. You're like, ooh, strap in. Something's coming. So, in the end, Bran is like, all right, let's go to your fucking crow. Because I do want to learn to fly. I do want to do this. And that is how the chapter ends, is with him capitulating.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess this is also a marker that he is going to be taking his forays into his direwolf a little bit more seriously, I think.
Yeah.
He's going to buckle down. So weird to think about it being like homework. But it is. Joseph's giving him homework.
And like, it's so interesting because of how mental it is. That the strain of it feels like something that it's hard to really imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Putting your will up against the will of another conscious being. Because the wolf is like conscious. It has thoughts of its own. It's not just, it's running on instinct to a point, but not the same way as I would imagine being in another wolf's mind would be.
Right, right.
I have to think that Bran's like connection there makes some sort of difference with it as well, but I don't know if that's true. I just sort of assume that bond that all of the Starks have with their wolves means that the wolves are slightly different than regular wolves also.
I agree with that. I feel like that has to be, and not that I get to say what has to be anything, but I feel like that has to be.
Yeah, and so this is one of the things that I found the most different. Just coming up, everything with Bran is, compared to the show, almost unrecognizable.
Oh, that's really good to hear.
It's really different, and you'll see, but I won't, I don't want to say that it's like better because I don't know how you're going to feel about it. But just there will be some changes coming, and I'm kind of looking forward to it because I believe, based on my recollection, that I did prefer what happened in the book. But there was also some real silly shit that they did that I was like, why at the time? So. But okay, so that's the end of the chapter. Before we wrap, I want to say hi to some new patrons. So everybody brace yourselves for the air horn. Welcome, new patrons! Amanda Svaluto, Seraphim, and Mark Prince. Welcome. Welcome, all of you beauties. Thank you all so much for becoming patrons. We love you. We're so happy to have you. And I hope that this air horn addition to the welcoming patrons thing isn't too obnoxious and that it feels celebratory to those whose names I happen to be saying at the time. And I'm just, always delighted every time I see a name when somebody signs up. I'm like, hi! I practically wave at my phone. But yeah, if you're interested in becoming a patron and supporting us, you can go to patreon.com/unspoiled. And there's all kinds of perks and goodies and whatnot. Also, open to non-patrons is the Discord, where that's where most of the Song of Ice and Fire chit-chat happens. The Discord is best, in terms of, where the majority of certain conversations happen. Song of Ice and Fire and Dresden Files have way more activity in the Discord than on Facebook. On Facebook, it's very minimal. And in the Discord, there's just tons of conversation going on all the time. And I think a lot of that is the ease of going back and forth between the spoiler and no spoiler channel. So you can simultaneously post something safe for Rashawn and then go into the other group and be like, did you see what I posted? Oh my God.
That's real nice.
Yeah, it's fun.
That's real nice, y'all.
But yeah, all right. So come and join the Discord. That's those two channels are open to non-patrons. So you can come and hang out with us and, guess on the way that Rashawn is going to react to certain things. You can correct things maybe that I remember wrong or that the show does a different way and point that out, because I'm always interested to bring that up whenever you and I don't have the best memory of certain parts of the show at this point. It's been a while. Mm-hmm. And I'm not planning on going back and rewatching that shit anytime soon, I gotta say. So, for me, it's gonna stay some RAM that I eventually clear out, hopefully. I think that's everything. Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap it?
No, ma'am.
All right, folks. Well, thank you again very much for listening. We love you. Until next time. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Bye, guys.
Joffrey, Cersei, Walder Frey, Meryn Trant, Tywin Lannister.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.